But the weather today is more like San Francisco weather, which is very Silicon Valley. And I figured wearing a hoodie made perfect sense, considering the subject matter and what we're going to be talking about in this show. And let's face it, it's low budget. We're taping this thing with iPads and iPhones and flip cams. And it's just kind of like, building something out of your garage or an apartment. And that's really, I think, a big piece of startup culture that we want to tap into. So this is the first time we're taping the show. It's probably going to be the second episode. We'll let Tim Westergren, who we're going to speak with later this week in Oakland at Pandora headquarters, go first. So for Cyrus Ferruti, who's the founder and CEO of Capsule, it's not a bad act to follow. So I hope you don't mind going second.
That's fine.
So we want to do two things in the show. We want to, number one, talk about the startups and the companies and the ideas. And we also want to get a better sense of what it's like to lead a startup and what it's like to take that jump into raising money and knowing that, most of the people that do this fail. That's a pretty daunting situation to jump into, and it takes a special kind of person. But first, tell us about Capsule. I look at it as Evite meets a private Facebook meets Pinterest. Is that a good way to describe it?
That's pretty well put, actually, yeah. The basic concept was to organize media around an experience as opposed to around an individual. So a lot of those services you mentioned and all of the big kind of networks out there, whether it be Facebook or YouTube or any of them, organize everything around the person. And that works really great in terms of, kind of your everyday stream of consciousness type of sharing, like we see every day on Twitter and Facebook and those kind of networks. But where it doesn't work is for shared group experiences. And we've all been, on a bachelor party or a birthday party or a reunion or whatever it might be. A bunch of people get together, share a great time. That experience ultimately takes on kind of a personality of its own, inside jokes, a song that was played on repeat maybe 50 times over the weekend, right? We've all done this. You get back and all of that media ends up scattered across all of these different networks and assigned to all those different people, and the context is lost. So that was really kind of the idea for Capsule, was realizing that and identifying that as the problem, and then going out and trying to build a platform that allowed people to easily contribute content to a space that preserved all of that media in the contents of the experience itself.
So the initial focus is weddings, is getting people to download this app, open a Capsule, and be able to have all of their wedding photos in one place, as opposed to after the fact, you're like, oh, what did my cousin do? What did my aunt do? What did grandma do? And so how does it actually work logistically? You have the Capsule app on your iPhone or Android, and I go and I download it, and okay, I want to access my sister's wedding. How does that work?
Sure. So basically the bride and groom will sign up for the service, and their wedding capsule has a unique code. They then distribute that code to their guests, whether that's via their wedding website or it's on their invitations. We also design these little information cards that they can hand out at the wedding, strategically place them. And it basically tells people to download Capsule Cam for iPhone or Android and gives the unique album code or capsule code for that event, so that users can join, and then any photos that they take at the event are instantly uploaded to the capsule,
right,
allowing everyone to contribute to one group album.
So does the invitation process happen also, or can it happen within the platform, or?
You mean in terms of being invited?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you can invite via email, you can invite via Facebook, or like I said, you can just distribute the code or the link. It works out, not unlike a shared Google document or something like that.
Gotcha.
You can invite via a couple different ways.
Gotcha. So this is your third startup. What are the first two?
The first one was called Easy Way Auctions, which was an eBay consignment shop. Everyone kind of knows that model now. When we took a shot at it, it was very early on. The concept had kind of originated up in the Bay Area. A company called Auction Drop made headlines pioneering the model. And I was working in Colorado at the time, right out of college. My brother was in D.C., my older brother, and he saw this piece on CNBC or somewhere about Auction Drop, and sent me the link and said, "Si, check this out. What do you think? I think we could do this." And we had always wanted to start a business together, so we said, "Sure." It sounded like an easy idea, low capital to get started. Gave that a shot. Ran it for about a year and a half, and it was while we were running that we had the idea for the next company. which was FlipSwap. Tried tried to sell the original business, but we're so excited about our new angle that we ultimately just shut it down and ran with FlipSwap. FlipSwap was basically, we kind of pioneered the idea of incentivized trade-in for mobile devices. So iPhones are great examples because a new one comes out every year. But so, when you wanted to upgrade from the 4, the 4S to the 5, being able to hand in your old phone and getting instant credit applied to the purchase of that handset.
Right.
So we built a piece of software that integrated with existing point-of-sale systems, analyzed a bunch of pricing data in real time to establish what the used kind of value of your old phone was, and went out and sold that door to door to start with, mom and pop shops basically, and worked our way up the food chain in mobile, and eventually raised a big VC round, got some big deals done with all the big guys actually now, AT&T and Verizon and all of them. So those were the first two, and I kind of wound my way out of that one, and now I've moved on to Capsule.
I'm asking you, this is the question that I think, or the sentiment that when people talk about startups, and especially when you talk about the high-profile private companies that will eventually go public or get bought out by somebody, a lot of investors will somewhat cynically say they're just waiting for their payday. They're just waiting to sell out, whether it's going public or whether somebody else picks them up. I mean, you're a guy that has sold one company, and now you've got another one that's gaining some traction and is doing really well. What is the end goal? I mean, is the end goal to either go public or sell out and start something new? Or is the end goal to, be at the top of one of these towers they're putting up in Santa Monica and have a company that you're going to be the CEO of for the next 20 years?
It's tough to say, honestly. I can tell you, quite honestly, that with FlipSwap, it got to a point where it was too big to be interesting, if that makes sense. And I don't know if that might have just kind of been where the company was at that point in time. But for me, and I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, what really kind of is so exciting for us is the actual kind of building, right? And not that a company ever stops building. I mean, even the biggest companies continue to innovate and build, but it becomes a lot more structured, obviously, the bigger you get. And so for me, I like defining products and bringing products to market and building teams, and that's really what I enjoy. So when that kind of started to slow down for me at the previous company, I felt the urge I felt like I had lost that. And again, I think I could have potentially stayed and pushed it, and because companies go through cycles, right? So we could have moved back into another phase of innovation and growth and all of that. But I was getting antsy, and I wanted to go do it again, so I went and replicated it. So I don't know that there's a hard and fast answer for me. I mean, yeah, an IPO or selling a company, if it makes sense, would be fantastic. But, ending up like, Jobs or Bill Gates or one of these guys that started one company and are now hugely successful, right? I think would be fantastic too. So.
You said with FlipSwap you had a lot of the big guys that were backing it. I'm not sure, what's the finance situation with Capsule?
Capsule's angel funded to date. So FlipSwap, we went through several rounds of funding. Very first round was kind of very close friends and family. That was, hey, everybody we know that can spare a buck, please take a gamble on this type of classic round.
See, that's the great stuff right there, right? This is how a company how much was FlipSwap sold for?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
You're not, well, that's fine. You don't have to, but I mean, it was probably a good chunk of change, and it started with your friends and family maybe tipping over their piggy bank to help you start the business.
It absolutely did, and I mean to kind of address your point, about the fear of failure. That's the thing that scares me the most is all these angel investments, and I did it with FlipSwap, like I said, and then I've done it again now with Capsule. Luckily, I made a nice return for the group of people that invested in FlipSwap. So it was a little easier to get them to invest in the second one, but it wasn't any less stressful for me because even though they're equity investments and companies fail all the time, and there's no recourse basically in an equity investment if the company does fail, it's not like a loan. It still feels like a loan to me, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't want to lose my uncle's $25,000. You know what I mean? Regardless of the fact that most startups do fail, I'd still feel that, responsibility.
So that process is what's really interesting. And I think when people talk about tech and they talk about startups, they don't ask basic questions about the process enough. the idea that, you look to your uncle and you're like, man, my uncle gave me 25 grand and I don't want to lose it. I mean, that resonates. It makes a lot of sense. And your uncle, obviously, or we hope, has confidence in you to say, you know what, this guy can do it, and I'm going to put 25 grand on the line for him. But when you get to that next step, when you're going to objective parties and you're going to people that have, guys just like you knocking on their door all day long, how do you actually initiate that process? How do you go to a venture capitalist and say, here's what I got, are you guys willing to invest? And I'm talking simply, I mean, do you Google them and send emails out, or
Sure.
how does that introduction process work?
Well, for me, the first time was kind of partially introductions. We moved from that really tight-knit friends and family round, which was the first round at FlipSwap, to a secondary round, which was kind of an expanded friends and family round. Luckily, we were kind of successful at that point, or had a little more success.
Right.
So we asked all of the original group to say, hey, well, do you have any other friends that you could introduce us to, right? And kind of expanded out that way. And from that group, we again asked for introductions. But, for me, actually at FlipSwap, we hired basically a boutique investment bank that helped us with a lot of introductions. They helped us put our first pitch, well, not our first pitch book together, but the one that we ultimately took to the VCs. Right. And I think, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of that stuff is in place for startups. There is some pretty good infrastructure out there, to help you kind of navigate a little bit. And, we had to pay for it, obviously, and there was a commission on the raise and things like that. But for us, for that initial VC raise, I would never do it again. But that's because I have the relationships myself now.
Right.
But they were integral for us securing that first round of financing. And I would say that's a great way. Aside from that, with Capsule, since FlipSwap wasn't kind of not actually at all in the same industry as Capsule, when I've looked to try to get Capsule in front of VCs, obviously the first place I went to was my network. But after that, it's not unlike what you just said. I mean, I make an effort to read, specifically TechCrunch and Mashable now that I'm kind of in tech. And when I read articles on companies that are related and I see who's investing in them, you can reach out. You can find out who those partners are pretty easily. You can on every VC's website, it shows you what boards they sit on. So if you find a company that's parallel to yours, got to be some interest there, right?
Gotcha. Yeah. And by the way, one of the reasons why we're doing this is because we want him to say he reads Mashable, TechCrunch, and TheStreet when he's looking for this information.
Absolutely.
Because it's tech in my mind. Tech media, whether it's social media, new media, those are the spaces that are the most exciting, the most interesting to look at, and that's why I think we're doing a bit more coverage on those spaces now, because, and especially the startup culture. I was writing about Dell the other day, and taking Dell private, and this is like the big story, and at the end of the day, Dell is going private because Dell really has no other options, and Hewlett Packard puts out a statement saying, we're going to go after their customers now, and to me that's saying, well, geez, you're just letting these customers know that you're there. I mean, shouldn't you already be getting those people, right? So I think there's a big problem right now in blue chip tech. And I don't expect you to trash Dell or trash Microsoft or anybody else, but how come we're seeing fewer and fewer companies that are 10, 15, 20 years along that run like startups? I think you can say Amazon still runs like a startup. People criticize them for spending money, but I think they would be really hurting their shareholders if they weren't spending the money that they're spending now to seize their opportunity. For everybody that says Apple has stopped innovating, I mean, that's garbage. Apple runs like a startup all these years down the road. Why is that not happening? Or maybe it is happening at a place like Microsoft, but it just doesn't feel like it. Or even at Google, where they have all these great ideas, but they're not coming to the market. There's not the same excitement around them as there is around an Amazon or an Apple.
It's an interesting question. I mean, I think it comes down to culture and leadership. I mean, Google, I think historically was, and I agree with you that more recently it doesn't have that same feeling. But historically, Google was the big company that entrepreneurs thought of still as a startup, right? And I agree with you that Amazon's a perfect example. And I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because they're too focused on shareholder returns, and unlike Bezos, they're scared to go into negative earnings per share for however many straight quarters it's been now for Amazon, right? Because they're investing, and that's how any startup has to do it, right? You run in the red for a long time, and for FlipSwap, for instance, a lot of my friends didn't understand that we could be losing hundreds of $1,000s a month. And I'm like, but you guys don't understand, we are building value. It's just, but we're building it long term. You've got to spend money to make money. And so I don't know that I have the answer, but I think maybe that's it. Maybe they're too focused on near-term results and afraid of the backlash from media and just public perception.
First thing I thought about with Capsule, and this is the idea of always growing, always thinking of what's next, always strategizing, envisioning the future, is okay. Weddings are I wouldn't say the obvious, but the perfect place to start. I mean, it just makes so much sense to start there, and the platform you put together it's nice. It fits. I think when somebody goes to it, and I know you signed a deal with the knot.com, so it just says wedding, and it just made perfect sense. But first thing I thought of is where do you go next? And I'm thinking, Ticketmaster. They're selling add-ons now more and more when you go buy tickets to a concert, whether it's a VIP package or even T-shirts and stuff like that. It would make sense, and you can even look where your Facebook friends are sitting and stuff when you look at the seating charts now. Wouldn't it make sense to say, buy a capsule for this concert? Now, I don't want to see you and your buddies drunk at the show, but I do want to see a great shot of the band on stage or whatever.
Absolutely.
Are you thinking along those lines, and where else might you be thinking? Because while weddings was a great idea to begin with, I doubt you think it's suffice to stop there.
Absolutely correct. No, yeah, we have a long list. The event space is a great one, and you're spot on. We built our platform to actually be easily integrated into existing software platforms. So the deal you mentioned with the Knot actually integrates into their wedding websites. So it kind of combines the functionality.
So this is a technical thing, right? I mean, technically, this is like developer speak that I wouldn't understand. Like you technically made sure that if somebody said, "Hey, we really like what you do. How can we work together?" that there weren't a whole bunch of technical hurdles to overcome.
Correct. And one of those things is the most general term you hear is an API, but basically just we built the infrastructure that allows our system to communicate with others via a system of protocols easily. And we set out, when we built the product, we had a lot of these ideas of the different areas we could hit, and so we wanted to make that feasible down the road. Is somebody like a Ticketmaster or an Eventbrite is another great one especially because they span so many different use cases of small groups to huge events. So being able to plug in and offering Capsule functionality, to their users or even through their platform. Another big one that we see is travel. So, somebody like an Orbitz or a Travelocity or, anybody in the travel space like that would give them some meaningful content on their site. Obviously, people are, planning their vacations through these platforms already, and being able to contribute back, to an album there would make a lot of sense. So outside of that, there are a whole host of others. I mean, we've looked at schools, so actually using Capsule as kind of a almost like a living, breathing yearbook, I think would be extremely interesting. Mommy groups, so like the whole kind of birthday party and the kids space is really interested in what we're doing. We've gotten a lot of interest from that area. What else? There are plenty of others. Reunions are huge.
Right.
We've been hit up from multiple, I don't know how many times now, somebody planning a reunion, whether it was a high school reunion or a family reunion or whatever, and looking to use Capsule for that. And the other is corporate. Corporate, we get all the time companies throwing a Christmas party or, doing a debut for a new product or whatever it is. So there are a lot of use cases, a lot of places it fits.
So one of the things I would say is a challenge for you guys, and this is where you would need serious revenue, more funding, a big player to step in, is this. It seems to me that this requires, at some points, and maybe you're already thinking about this, a local sales staff. At the end of the day, you can have people coming to your door saying, "Hey, we saw this, we think it's a great idea," but the universe is huge, and you need feet on the ground. So how do you address that?
Sure. Well, I mean, my background with FlipSwap, we kind of got our exposure through partnerships. And I still think that's a really good way to grow for a company with limited resources, is find somebody who's got the existing infrastructure and the existing reach and try to somehow, position it as a value add to them. So the Knot being the perfect example. We did try local to be honest with you, we contacted almost every photographer and wedding planner in Southern California, just trying to make them, and literally contact driving.
And when you
to their
say
office.
we, do you mean you?
I mean me and one other guy that works. Yeah, exactly. We were on the phone driving to their offices, and we kind of tried to come up with an affiliate model plan where we could monetize them. But more than anything, too, it was just about making them aware that we existed, because they're the ones that are going to consistently interact with brides, in this case with weddings, right? So trying to educate. But somebody like The Knot, who, their stats say they touch 8 in 10 brides in this country. So being able to have them now, promote the message is huge. So, I mean, local sales staff, not if I can help it. I would rather partner.
The overhead is just straight.
Right. I would rather partner with somebody who already has it.
Right. Gotcha. I think probably one of my favorite entrepreneurs right now is Jack Dorsey.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, I think he's probably everybody's, the stuff that he's accomplished. But it seems to me, and I don't know the guy, but it seems to me that he's already thinking of the next idea. Like, he knows what's coming after Square. He knows what he's going to be working on next. And I know he's already got his hands in other things, but in that sort of, you're a serial entrepreneur, you're working hard on Capsule, obviously, but do you have it in your head? Okay, this is what's going to be next. This is what I'm going to do next. Or are you like, this thing goes well, and for whatever reason, I'm not going to be doing it anymore. I'm going to, hang out on the beach for a year and think. Or are you just ready, like, take a day off and then you're going after the next thing?
No, I can't really turn my brain off, so I have ideas all the time. I have an ideas folder on my desktop, and I have I use my iPhone and I take notes. But I have, 50 or 100 ideas on tap that I haven't invested a lot of mental resources in. It's kind of just, okay, I have the idea, so I jot it down and I file it away for later.
Everything okay? Do you want coffee, anything?
We're doing great. Fantastic.
So I don't have another one that I'm ready to jump to right this second, and that's partially a conscious effort, though, because I'm trying to keep my mind focused on Capsule. Thank you for saying we were successful, but we still have a long way to go as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I'm trying to keep it focused, and like I said, that doesn't mean that I don't have a whole list of other things I would love to go pursue and could easily move to, but for now I'm trying to stay.
Gotcha. All right, very good. This is Cyrus Ferruti from Capsule. It's trycapsule.com, and of course they're on the iPhone, they're on Android, and I have to ask one more thing.
Sure.
I'm not believing the BlackBerry hype, even though they've got the new phones out finally. I don't think they're even available in the U.S. yet, but they will be soon. Is there going to be an app for RIM? Because it'll always be RIM to me.
Right. There's not one planned right now.
Because nobody ever asked that question. All these. I don't think Pandora has a BlackBerry app.
Right.
And I've always, why don't you do BlackBerry? And everyone just kind of ignores the question. It's like
I think everybody kind of felt their pulse getting lower and lower and lower, and it was like, with limited resources, you got to go after the ones that you feel are going up, not down. And we kind of hacked a solution, and not really a hack, it is a feature, but our answer to that question is you can also contribute to Capsules via an email. So every Capsule has a unique email address, and you can mail photos and stuff, email photos and stuff like that. So BlackBerry users, we tell them to take a photo and email it into the Capsule.
Gotcha. He's got it covered. Cyrus Ferruti from Capsule on the first taping of The Beach Meets the Streets here at the Back in the Beach Cafe in Santa Monica on Pacific Coast Highway. It'll be the second episode as we're heading to San Francisco next to talk to Tim Westerkin from Pandora.